Hi, my name is Kara. Welcome to Sequentially Yours, Initially Mine. This is the show where we look over this week's number ones and try to give you the best ones for you to spend your money on. Alright, so let's roll right into it because there were a lot this week. There's been a lot this month of number ones, so let's just kind of get with all of them. We'll start with Tokyo Ghost. Now, I'm starting with this because it was far and away my least favorite of the week. It is so cynical and so needlessly gritty, needlessly violent. It has It's better writing than Frank Miller, but it has all the hallmarks of Frank Miller. It's trying to be a detective type thing without any mystery. It loves to kill off people in ironic ways, and it presents a view of humanity that quite frankly makes no god-doomed sense. None whatsoever. The fact of the matter is that, quite frankly, I just don't see us ever becoming this, and it wants to present itself as satire, but really it's high school satire. It's, when you just read 1984 and you think that that is the height of satirical dystopian fantasies, so you try to write your own. No, Tokyo Ghost does not work, and for the record, it's by Rick Remender, which some of you may recall him. He's the guy who was in charge of Marvel's Axis storyline before the current Secret Wars one, and Sean Murphy, writer, creators, and artist on all of them, and Matt Hollingsworth did colors. I will give Hollingsworth credit for the colors, which are actually quite well done. It's gritty without being dull, and that is really impressive, but otherwise, it's about what I expect from Remender, and I don't really know Murphy's work that well, but apparently he can't rein Rick in. So, also, I'm looking at the cover now, and I just realized that one of the main characters' motorcycles is called Zeus's dick. Guys, subtle metaphor. Subtle. Alright. Next, we have Agent Carter #1, coming out of Marvel. Marvel's been doing a lot of re-releases, a lot of backstory, because their main focus right now is on Secret Wars and on setting up for the all-new, all-different Marvel Universe coming out next month. So, this was Agent Carter #1, written by Catherine Emanen, artist Rich Ellis, and colorist Rachel Rosenberg. I really like Agent Carter, and that's why I don't really like this. This person is not Agent Carter. Let's ignore the blonde bit for a moment, but I'll come back to that. I don't care that she's blonde per se in this. Hair dye has existed for a long time. What I don't like about it is that she's not the Agent Carter I've come to know. She is brusque and, for lack of a better term, punchy. She actually reminds me a little bit more of Captain Marvel without all of the kind of depth that Captain Marvel has, at least under Kelly Sue DeConnick. Agent Carter, the Agent Carter that I'm used to from the show and whatnot, that we have, and the movies that we have kind of got an idea of, is suave. She is cool under pressure. She is controlled. This Agent Carter is more brute force, punch your way through it. I'm angry and I'm going to do what I want type, and it doesn't work. It's not bad per se. It's that it has nothing to do with this character. Alright. Captain America White. This is actually a re-release. It's the number 0 of the Captain America White from Jeff Loeb's and Tim Sale's color books. The other ones included, I may be missing some, but there was Hulk Gray, Spider-Man Blue, which is one of my favorite comics, and you'll actually notice in the opening credits of the main show, me reading it. I adore Spider-Man Blue. Daredevil Yellow, and think that's about it, but I could be wrong on this. Either way, the colors are representative of the themes that are going on in it. It's not bad. And the re-release is pretty good. They did a good job of revamping it, recoloring it just a little bit to make it work. I kind of like the art style, which is very minimalist to the point that the characters are just shy of being colored shapes. And that's Tim Sale's work, and I gotta give him credit for that. Really interesting way of approaching it. Jeff Loeb, on the other hand, is basically the Chris Nolan of comic books, in the sense that he loves long monologues that explain to us why what is going on is very, very important. Now, don't get me wrong, these things may not be unimportant. No, a lot of the times these are very important things, but it lacks a sort of finesse that other writers have the ability to bring out. I've mentioned Kieran Gillen in the past, but Kieran Gillen is a really good writer when it comes to bringing across concepts without having to use narration boxes or dialogue to do it, with giving us just enough that we can make the connections ourselves. Jeff Loeb doesn't trust us to do that. Excuse me. Pardon me. He would rather just have the character monologue at us and tell us, in this case, why it was so important that Bucky died. Yes, we know. We understand that your kid's sidekick dying in the middle of a war when you were the one who brought him on and trained him is important. We know that. Don't tell us this. Show it to us. And I think that's where this falls apart. Spider-Man Blue also does a lot of monologuing, but it monologues around the subject. It doesn't monologue at the subject, like Captain America White does. It's not a bad book, and if you didn't get to read this the first time around, absolutely read it. No questions asked. Read all the color books. All the ones that I've read have been fantastic, with, again, Spider-Man Blue probably being my absolute favorite of them. But, yeah, you shouldn't go out of your way for it, and don't set your sights amazingly high. Prepare to be talked at a little bit. The Infinite Adventures of Jonas Quantum, #1. It's written by Mark Guggenheim, who we saw last time I was doing this, and Freddie Williams II, not Jr., is the artist, with Christopher Sotomayor as the colorist. The colors in this are really, really very striking, and also has that Kubrickian sense of the color that you're seeing is related to the emotions that you should be feeling in the sense. Also Hitchcockian, if you look at Vertigo, for example. The colors in the frame really are related very heavily to what's going on. The problem is that this falls apart in the writing, and I love Mark Guggenheim, I really do. But what happens here with the Infinite Adventures of Jonas Quantum, I keep forgetting all those other bits, is that we are given a series of vignettes without having any time to breathe. It's this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, and they're all related to each other one little bit at a time, but we don't get to reflect on that. In fact, they jump ahead several years, essentially missing all of the possible reflection that we could be having on this character and on his events. So I was exhausted after reading this because I felt like I was just rushed through the story. This sort of storytelling works in certain contexts, but certainly not for a #1 issue where you really do need to spend your time getting people to like your character, to want to be with this person again. Jonas Quantum, all I know about him is that he is an impossibly super genius who cured death by accident and then lost the formula. And that's really about it. I don't know anything about him. I think I'm supposed to feel sad because he worked so hard and, he's trying to do his best and etc., etc., etc. But honestly, all I could feel was, why didn't you just destroy it? Why did you write this down? You clearly have an eidetic memory. If you needed the death cure, you have it. In fact, he realizes this at the end of the book. Spoiler warning, sorry. And suffice it to say, though, not what I would jump at, and it... Let's put it this way. It was $3.99. For $1.99, I would say buy it. For $3.99, not really worth the money. Voltron from the Ashes. Alright, I gotta be honest, guys. I love Voltron. It's one of the cartoons that I grew up on. Voltron and Robotech. More so than even than Transformers and G.I. Joe, which is what a lot of people did. Voltron was my big thing. So much so that my mother, who is, of course, a mother, remembered me saying it, and for Christmas got me a Voltron box set without me having to ask for it. And don't get me wrong, moms are great. I love my mom, but the fact that she remembered that really just that says a lot there about how much I was into it. So when I saw this on the shelf, I got excited. And it's wholly adequate. Wholly adequate. It is not great by any stretch of the imagination, but it had enough of the Voltron tropes in it, forming the blazing sword and whatnot. You got to see all of the original characters, Keith, Pidge, Hunk, Princess Illyria, and Lance. You didn't get to see Sven, unfortunately, but oh well. And you got to see them essentially... There's a battle with a whole lot of Robeasts that they are just overwhelmed. There's only so much that Voltron can do. The witch... What's her name? Hagar? Yeah, Hagar, Mother of Monsters. I can't believe I forgot that. I just read it, too. It says it on the first page. Yeah, Hagar, Mother of Monsters, is sort of in it. This actually takes place about 200 years after, theoretically, Voltron's last battle, but we're not quite sure whether it actually happened or whether it was just a dream that Hagar had in suspended animation. It lays down enough information to let us know how things have changed and what we should expect from this. But ultimately, it fails to draw in new people to the setting. If you don't know enough about Voltron, the fact that it starts with one of the coffins that she sends the Robeasts in floating through space isn't going to mean a whole lot to you. The composition of the teams is not really given any weight. For example, the team, theoretically, in the future, basically Voltron has been destroyed-ish, and they're training teams on the off chance that they might need him again, since they theoretically defeated Lotor, who took over for Zarkon, his father. But sorry, going into geek mode here. But theoretically, they defeated Lotor. Voltron was destroyed-ish. They're training teams to one day pilot Voltron again if they need to. Black Team is clearly going to be our team of protagonists because they're the outsiders, but even then, we're only given one member of Black Team's information, anything about them, and all we know is that, quite frankly, he's a bit of a douche. And that's about it. The narrative tells us that he does wrong, but because of narrative structure, we know that this is going to be the leader of the big team because we know how tropes work. It's, again, wholly adequate. I'd like to see a little bit more focus. I would have liked to see a little bit less reliance on how we know storytelling works. Alright, Awake, the new one from Action Lab. This was very close to my favorite for the week. I wasn't exactly sure. There's only maybe one or two things that really brought it back. As far as I can tell for it, the girl on the cover, which you can see there, has some sort of special power, and she's a chosen one that she doesn't particularly like it. We're not quite sure what she's chosen for. But one thing that I do like is that she also is not the only person with this power, and for the most part, the only other person we saw with this power spends it on nothing. He just has it. It's a thing he does. Special powers in this case are treated either really super important or really unimportant. The characters are compelling, the artwork is fantastic, the coloring is great. Just story by Susan Beneville, art by Brian Hess, and we don't actually have a specific colorist listed here, so I'm going to guess that Brian Hess also did the coloring, although Darnay Lang did the flatting, so that's probably related to it at least. But some of these pages are really just well designed and well shadowed. I love it. The character facial expressions are very, very well put together. I love kind of almost everything about this. The only thing about it is that in attempting to leave a mystery, they failed to give us any reason, any stakes. I don't know why this little girl is traveling to this cave in order to confront this something or other. Why is this important? We need some sort of stakes. That's the only thing that kind of kept it from the number one slot is I don't know why I should care other than I happen to like this character. At which point I just don't want her to get involved in bad stuff. Alright. So finally, the winner for this week. Evil Dead 2. Beyond Dead by Dawn. It is Certified Groovy and Special Edition. Apparently number 2 is already out, but this has just hit my shelf because, well, that happens. And this is an important thing about the Initially Mine stuff. I always pick the number ones off the shelf, even if they're not technically number ones, or because they hit it later, because, quite frankly, you never know when your comic shop is going to put something out, whether they're going to get something late or early or what. So you really you need to be able to evaluate these things, even if there is more coming out. Alright, so one of the things I like about this is that it covers the second movie, really. It covers Evil Dead 2 pretty quickly, pretty easily. Hold on, just for the record. Writer is Frank Hanna. Pencils are done by 3 different people. Barnaby Bagenda, Oscar Balzuldua, and Edgar Salazar did the prequel section that is actually in the back. Colors by Chris Summers. All of these people did an amazing, amazing job. Ash does not appear to be the main character in this. Actually, Annie from the second one is the main character. After Ash gets sent back in time that we see the events in Army of Darkness, Annie goes to hell. That's what happened after Ash went through that big portal thing, is Annie went to hell. And in this case, the knife thing that killed her because Ash's hand stabbed her in the back. I may have seen this movie a couple of times. Ash's hand stabbed her in the back with it. Turns out it's a demon fighting knife. So we get a lot of stuff about her in hell and her using the knife and the Necronomicon Ex Mortis in order to find a way to fight her way out, essentially. Ash does come in here in that she uses Ash's evil hand in order to resurrect Ash in hell. Just make a duplicate copy of him, essentially, while he's also back in time fighting the Deadites there. It's well put together. The character Annie is given more development, and it's a compelling work. I also like a lot of the designs. The way the Deadites are portrayed are fantastic. In the back, you get to see some of the work from the 3 artists on here, and some of their test works and all that. I especially like this one, Oscar Bazaldua. I'm sorry, sir, for screwing up your name. I like this line. When a replacement was needed for Barnaby Bagenda, Oscar's take on Ash's facial expressions sealed the deal. And you know what? They're absolutely right. The facial expressions are amazing, and I will be sure to put them up here so that you can see what I'm talking about, but this is really incredible work here. Yeah, so... But the prequel is nice. It explains a lot of how the Necronomicon is touching things other than that one cabin. The only thing that took me for a loop, and it's a plot hole, so excuse me on this one, but at the beginning it has our Professor, what was his name? Noby. Duh, how could I forget that? Professor Raymond Noby. It shows him summoning the Deadites for the first time by accident. Now, in the movies, they played a tape of him reading from the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, and that's what summoned the Deadites back after he had theoretically done that. In this case, they also used the tape, which is supposed to be a connection to the movies, I suppose, but why didn't he summon the Deadites when he recorded the tape? That is a very specific thing that you need to record the summoning spell and then play it back, apparently, because just saying it out loud is not enough to get the Deadites to show up. It's a silly plot hole. It's toward the beginning, so by the end of the book I'd forgotten about it. But if you want to see some Evil Dead work that is not just Ash being the badass that we know, and is actually you get to see some other people also being badasses or screwing things up or, just building on this ridiculously silly world that Sam Raimi came up with, it is really worth reading Evil Dead 2. $6, but look at how thick this thing is. This is a hefty book. It's worth it. So yeah, if you're out there and you want to hit your comic store, pick up Evil Dead 2. It's worth the extra money, and you will enjoy it. Alright, well, I don't know exactly how you're going to feel about any of these, but the opinions you just heard were initially mine. Take care.